Thank you so much. Welcome, comrades. We continue discussing the conflict in Russia, Ukraine. We have our commissar, the commissar of the Zimbabwe Communist Party, Comrade Ian Beddowes. He is also the acting secretary of the International Relations. We welcome you, Comrade Ian Beddowes. Let's start with the Warsaw Pact. We know that the Warsaw Treaty Organization was founded on the 14th of May, 1955, and dissolved on the 1st of July, 1991. And we know as a historical fact that the Soviet Union, Albania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, Hungary, Poland, Romania were part of the Warsaw Pact. What then happened after the counter-revolutionaries in the Soviet Union? Maybe if you can take us through for a few minutes on that.
Well, the Warsaw Pact was formed in response to NATO. When NATO was first formed, the Soviet Union, although they knew what it was, actually asked to join NATO because they'd been part of the coalition during the Second World War. Now, one of the things that we should know is that even in 1944, there were Ukrainian Nazis who had run away as they were losing during the Second World War. These were a small group of people, most in Western Ukraine, who supported the Nazi invasion. And some of them were known war criminals. When they ran away, they were recruited even before the end of the war by the United States and used later by the United States to destabilize the Soviet Union. So we should be aware that the Cold War was started by the United States and Britain as soon as the Second World War was over, because the Second World War was very crucial. Not only was it a war against fascism, but it was a war in which the Soviets and the communist parties outside the Soviet Union played the major role in fighting. The Red Army lost most of the people who died. 26 million people died in the Soviet Union. And even outside the Soviet Union, it was partisans in Greece, Yugoslavia, Albania, which freed themselves from Nazi domination. And even in the East, Vietnam, China, Korea, local communist parties played a major part in fighting Japanese imperialism. Now, what happened, even before the end of the war, the West started turning on its allies. And one of the things that they did in Ukraine, which we must understand, is that Ukrainian Nazis, these were guys who had slaughtered Jews, slaughtered Poles, and were even noted by the Nazis, by the German Nazis, as being particularly vicious towards other.
Comrade Beddowes,
Yeah.
we lost you a bit.
So you asked about the Warsaw Pact. The Warsaw Pact was formed because of the activities of NATO and of US and British intelligence. So when there was counter-revolution in Eastern Europe, and maybe we can look at another day at the reasons for that counter-revolution, then the Warsaw Pact broke up. And the borders of the Soviet Union, which had lost so many people during the war, were now being violated. And by the way, there was an agreement with Gorbachev and the West saying that if the Warsaw Pact was no more, they wouldn't put NATO bases in place like Poland, but they did. They reneged on the agreement, and they're trying to put and were trying to put bases in Ukraine again.
Yes. Let's look into this, Comrade Beddowes, because a lot of people there, and I've seen in quite a number of social media platforms, they then tend to blame President Putin for what is happening in Ukraine, but they forget what was the attitude of the Americans in 1962 when the Americans invaded Cuba in a foiled assassination attempt to the life of Fidel Castro. In fact, they wanted to overthrow the Castro administration in 1962, and it led to what was then called the Cuban Missile Crisis, because the Americans were arguing that the Soviet Union cannot have missiles on Cuban soil just 90 miles away from the United States, because the president then Kennedy was saying it was a direct attack on the Americans by the Soviet Union. But comrades are now confused, because what Putin is saying is exactly what the Americans were saying in 1962, that NATO cannot today build its own military bases in Ukraine. What's your attitude to that?
Yeah, it's absolutely correct, because the USA has divided the whole world into military regions. No other country has done that. We in Africa are under AFRICOM. And in fact, most African governments have bought into it. So effectively, what we have is African armies working for the USA to defend US interests in Africa. So this thing extends everywhere, let alone Ukraine. The US has got bases in Turkey and Poland now, with arms trained towards Russia. So now they want to add more again. So no country has got, apart from USA, is trying to control the whole world. It is the USA which is the danger to the whole world. Now, even if we look at this government of Ukraine, how did it come about? Because Russia recognized the independence of Ukraine from 1991 until 2014 came the crisis. Now, like I said earlier, Ukrainian Nazis had been really nasty people, the equivalent of AWB, but harder. If you like, the equivalent of AWB, Ku Klux Klan. These were the people who were being trained by the United States. And also, by the way, by the Israelis, despite the fact that these guys had massacred Jews in millions. So in 2014, President Yanukovych of Ukraine had decided that because of the economic collapse that occurred right across the former Soviet Union after the counter-revolution, had decided it was better to make a pact with the Russians than with the European Union. And that is when the Americans and the Europeans, including the Germans, who'd been responsible for the invasion in 1941, they came together and they backed these Nazi gangs. And they overthrew the government of Yanukovych. And when they overthrew the government, the first thing they went for was the trade union headquarters in both Kiev and Odessa. And they...
Yes, we hear you, Comrade Beddowes.
Who imagine that they're on the left, who support these Nazis.
Comrade Beddowes, we lost you a bit when you were talking about the destruction of the headquarters of the trade union in Ukraine. Maybe if you can connect from
there. They burnt down the headquarters of the trade unions in both Kiev and Odessa, maybe some other places as well. And when they burnt them with the trade unionists inside. This was really nasty.
And the
and
Western
yes,
media does not speak to this.
no, of course not. And then you see what happened was, because these were like ethnic purists who wanted everyone to speak Ukrainian, which, by the way, is basically a West Ukrainian, a language in West Ukraine. The people of Eastern Ukraine had never spoken Ukrainian. They spoke Russian, and still do. And then there were some intermediate dialects between Russian and German. It's like in Zimbabwe, you've got different dialects of Shona. What is a dialect? What is a language? Where does a dialect is Ndebele a dialect of Zulu, or is it a separate language? You've always got these questions. And it's rather like that in Russia and Ukraine. You've got intermediate dialects between Ukrainian and Russian anyway. But these guys were trying to enforce the Ukrainian language on people on the East Ukraine, who also had memories of the Second War and the fight against the Nazis. And they were not prepared to live under Nazi rule. Crimea, which is, oh no, Russia has taken Crimea, but Crimea, during the time of the Soviet Union, I think 1957, Khrushchev decided, just for administrative reasons, it's easier to administer Crimea and Ukraine. But those were never Ukrainians as such. And so they didn't want to be part of this Nazi Ukraine. And the same with the people of Donetsk and Luhansk. They didn't want to be part of this Nazi Ukraine. And from my point of view, the Russians and Putin have even been slow to support them.
Yes, let's then look into this, because our detractors, the far left, are accusing us of supporting President Putin, who is not a communist. Please take us through that.
Well, historically, the ultra-left has always been anti-communist. It goes long, long back. And the Americans, again, have had a long history of supporting the pseudo-left, they call it the parallel left. So at the end of the day, you may say, I'm coming from the left, but what are you doing? You're supporting US imperialism backdoor. That's what's happening. So we know that Putin is not a communist, but the Communist Party of the Russian Federation for sure supports the current moves by Putin and the government, because Russia is under attack. And by the way, the Communist Party of the Ukraine is underground, as the South African Communist Party was during apartheid.
Yes.
So there's a lot of parallels between the Ukrainian government and apartheid. Sure, there's a lot of things we can disagree with Putin and his support from the oligarchs. That's not wrong. But we don't say that the USA has got the right to put a military base in Ukraine and support a Nazi government there, because Putin is not a communist. That's ultra-leftist nonsense.
Yes, yes. Let's look, how many bases does the United States have across the globe? Do we know? They've been built. There's different estimates. 800 official bases. Located across the globe.
800 located across the globe. And the special.
And Russia does not have any.
And as no. It might have a few troops in Belarus or one or two of the former Soviet republics, but he doesn't have troops across the globe. It doesn't have troops in the Americas. It doesn't have troops in Africa or Eastern Asia. Not at all.
Yeah. As we move to conclude, Comrade Beddowes, we have seen the statement by the African Union calling on Russia to pull out of Ukraine. What is our attitude? Because our comrades want to understand the class character of the current African Union. You also know the bombing of Libya, that AU turned a blind eye or participated in the bombing of Libya by not protesting the bombing of Libya by NATO. What's your point on what the African Union had said?
Well, the African Union is a collection of African governments led by African presidents who are little more than colonial governors for the French or the British or whoever else. The African Union is not the OAU of Kwame Nkrumah and Ahmed Ben Bella and those great leaders. These are just, for the most part, they're simply puppets. We saw their attitude as well when we got these coups against the French, these progressive coups against French rule in Mali, Guinea, and Burkina Faso. Oh, they were horrified. But yet there's no chance for democratic elections in any of these countries. And we know that France is under military occupation of parts of Africa. And we know that USA has got a huge base in Botswana, Uganda, Ethiopia. It's got bases all over Africa. And those troops will be used against us, as they were in Libya. Troops were US, but they didn't have to put ground troops, so they don't like getting their own boys killed, but they bombed from the air. Libya was destroyed from the air, from aircraft carriers. So we see what the USA did in Libya, but we don't want to recognize what the USA is doing in Ukraine.
Are we not, should we not be taking the blame, Comrade Beddowes, us as communists in Africa, of not building Africa left? Because you'll agree with me that liberalism is taking root in the continent. The governments in Ghana, they are liberal. We've analyzed the West Africa in terms of its relationship with France, that it is what Kwame Nkrumah characterized a neo-colonial state. And we see the looting class in Southern Africa, in South Africa, in Zimbabwe. Are we not really, of course, as communists to be blamed that we might be moving slowly in strengthening Africa left?
I think we need to move more quickly in building the real left, communist-led left in Africa. And I think there's some reluctance by some people. They're looking at things. We've got this problem in Africa, that we see everything in terms of our own leaders. And yes, our own leaders are pretty bad. But remember that even half-decent African leader that we've had has been removed by the intervention of the imperialists, and in many cases murdered. So it's high time now we recognize that the time of political liberation is far gone. We need economic liberation. And that doesn't mean just like we're seeing in South Africa, we saw in Zimbabwe, giving little tenders to everybody. It means hammering a national plan for each and every country, which everybody buys into. And the development, as the great African economist A.M. Babu said, we must develop our own industry. Zimbabwe's been deindustrialized, and even South Africa is in the process of being deindustrialized. So we need to rebuild that on a large scale. Not say that the African socialism, everybody must have his little plot and grow a few mealies and have a cow or two. No. We need proper planning. We need to develop Africa planning around industry.
Yes. Our last comment, Comrade Beddowes, your views on the narrow nationalism. We see a narrow nationalism taking root in our continent. If you look at what is happening in Nigeria, what is happening in Ghana, what is happening in South Africa, where we begin to characterize ourselves along nationalities. What's your view? Because we are no longer guided by solidarity, but we now want to group ourselves according to nationalities. What's your last comment on that?
That's a form of fascism, that you think only your ethnic group is right. And once you go on that road, once you divide people by nationality, ethnicity, it doesn't stop. This one is not exactly one of our people because his mother was such and such. We cannot carry on like that. It cannot sustain us. We need to unite people around the slogan of Pan-Africanism must re-emerge. And what is worse, what we see in South Africa at the moment is that we see some South Africans wanting to defend their leaders against the Zondo Commission and against massive corruption, which is happening at all. And then the very same people blaming foreigners for their economic problems. It's just incredible, because South Africa has started to go the way of Zimbabwe, where the leadership has been looting on a massive scale. And that has been the main thing, which even under capitalism has undermined industry and progress.
Comrade Ian Beddowes, we end it here because of time. We will, of course, at some point continue to have this discussion. I was with the Comrade Ian Beddowes, as I said, the acting Secretary of International Relations, is the Commissar of the Zimbabwe Communist Party. I am Mabuto Nicholas Mabena, General Secretary of the Zimbabwe Communist Party. Please like the video, write your comments. We know that you might want to share with us your views. Please write your comments in the comment section, and we indeed going to share with the Comrade Ian Beddowes. Please subscribe to this video channel. Otherwise, have a great day. Let's continue to analyze what is happening in Ukraine. But we advise our comrades that let us not be bombarded by BBC, CNN. Let us watch Russia Today, Channel 46, and the other progressive channels. Otherwise, have a great day. Thank you so much, Comrade Ian Beddowes.
Thank you very much. Thanks to everybody. Bye-bye.